right, good afternoon. Again, my name is Mindy Cheek, and I can tell you that when I told people, family and friends, that I would be doing this talk today, they automatically assumed I'd be speaking on senior living, something in retirement. I'm a quasi-expert in that industry. That's what I do. Imagine the looks on their faces when I shared with them that I'm actually talking about my journey to becoming a mom for the second time. I know what you're thinking. At your age? Yes, at my age. This is my son, Casey. Casey is 24 years old. He is a successful technical director in Austin, Texas. You can see he's got a little attitude. Great guy. This is my son, Henry. Henry is 16 months old. He thinks he's 5. Don't tell him. He has his whole life ahead of him. I had my son Casey the traditional way. I got married to a man. I got pregnant. I became a mom. The narrative changed, though, when Casey was a year old. I came out. Fast forward several years later, I marry again. This time I married a woman. Her name is Paige, and she's my soulmate. We're soon to be celebrating 13 years. Thank you. Now, there are immeasurable conversations going on around the world today about what legally defines a marriage and what constitutes a family. I can tell you this is not a discourse on either one of those topics. This is simply a snapshot into one legally married same-sex couple and our journey to our family. Now, the decision to start our family or to add to our family was on the table from the very beginning, but it was the procrastinator's conversation. We would talk about it, we would table it, research a little bit, but no real quantitative results. And then 3 years in, Paige had an emergency hysterectomy, and then silence. And I can tell you that sadness can halt decisions without even realizing that they're doing so. But after a period of grieving and healing, we womaned up, and we breathed in new possibilities. We started researching. We researched adoptions. We had friends coming in and asking us if they could be donors, if they could be surrogates for us. We researched becoming foster parents. This is what we found. There are 17 million children living around the world in orphanages or on the streets. There are 400,000 children in the United States alone living in foster care. Now, 24,000 of those kids will age out of the system without ever being adopted or ever knowing a forever family. 70% of those kids that age out will tell you they want to further their education past high school, but only 25% of them will even receive a high school diploma or even a GED. And I can tell you, these numbers really resonated with us, and it's not something we personally could turn a blind eye on. So we started researching agencies. We found an agency that did a foster to adopt program, and they would actually treat us as equals with opposite-sex parents. They did tell us, though, how going in, that it would take us a little bit longer to be matched with a child because we were a same-sex couple. And they also told us that once we adopted, we would have to do a single-parent adoption, and then later on we would do a second-parent adoption because Texas doesn't recognize our marriage. But we pushed on. It took us 6 months to become licensed as foster family. 6 months of training, background checks, FBI fingerprints, child-proofing our homes, pet vaccinations, you name it, we did it. The only thing we didn't have to do was do a drug test, which I found that a little weird, interesting, but we would have passed, by the way, if anybody's wondering. Interesting nonetheless. In that 6 months when we received our license, we were ecstatic. We started getting names of children. We started submitting our home study. We knew there was no way it was going to take that long. 6 months in, we hadn't been chosen. 8 months in, nothing. 10 months, nothing. 11 months, we just made a decision. We sat down and we said, you know what? This may not be meant to be. We'll give it a year. If nothing happens in a year, we'll reevaluate. And we'll think about what we're going to do. In the 12th month, we received the phone call. We were chosen for a 3-year-old little girl. I still get goosebumps. I still remember the day. 3 years old, little girl. Beautiful. She lived an hour and a half away, and the plan was that we would go there on a Friday. We would meet with her for 2 hours. She would get to know us. We'd get to know her. The following week, she'd come to our home, and then Wednesday of that week, she would come and live with us permanently. We were ecstatic. So we made the journey to see her. This is us on the car ride there. Super excited. We get to the CPS office, and we're sitting there. We're waiting in the waiting room. We're waiting for her to get there. And I can tell you, I remember when she and her foster family walked through the door, we could hear her laughing. We couldn't see her because there was a wall between us. But I remember Paige looked at me and she said, "That's her. That's our daughter." We had the most beautiful 2-hour meeting with her. I say meeting. I mean, beautiful 2 hours of on the floor, playing with dirty Legos and everything else that was in that CPS office. We didn't care. We were in love. You've heard it said that it's love at first sight when you meet your child for the first time. I'm telling you, the sentiment is the same when it's adoption. We were in love. Now, one thing that the CPS caseworker asked us, if would we be willing to meet with the foster family after our meeting with the little girl. We said, of course. We had no reason to forego the meeting. After all, they had had her in their home for 11 months. They had been asked if they wanted to adopt her. They said no. They had, by their own admission, fostered 19 children up to that point. They had biological children of their own. We thought, who better to ask her likes, her dislikes, her habits, but them. So when that time came, they walked in the room, and we immediately knew that our enthusiasm was not mirrored. The man came in. He was boastful and proud. He said things like, she loves to go to church, and she really prefers men over women. Okay. When the foster mom walked in the room, she had her cell phone in one hand. She shook out her other hand, and she introduced herself. And then she looked at us and she said, "Now, are you sisters, cousins, friends? What are you?" I said, "We're married." I had a feeling she knew the answer to that question before she ever asked it. The rest of the time we met with them, she sat on the floor texting the entire time. She never made eye contact or even tried to get to know us. We left that meeting feeling a little sick, I don't think that we've ever experienced such blatant unkindness as a human being to another human being, or such really discrimination, to our face anyway. I'll say that. It was interesting, we just never experienced that. But we pushed on because we were joyful nonetheless because our daughter would be with us the next week. We made the hour-and-a-half journey back home, and when we got home, we got a phone call. It was from the caseworker. She called to inform us that the foster family had had a change of heart. After our meeting, they felt like they needed to adopt her. I asked the question, is it because we're a same-sex couple? She said, "Oh, I'm not allowed to answer that question." Well, you just did. We were sick. We had friends that were coming in, throwing us showers. We had gifts already arriving. This was a death. It was horrible. It was something I wish no one to experience. We took some time to really gather our thoughts and heal. And after that time, we decided, we're not ready to throw in the towel. We're going to give it 6 more months. The next week, we get the call. There's 2 boys. They're in a shelter. They need an emergency placement. They had been under CPS watch for 11 months, and by our understanding, it was 12 months before parental rights would be terminated and the boys would be up for adoption. And we said, bring our boys home. They showed up the Friday before Thanksgiving. Now, keep in mind, this was the Thanksgiving that I had agreed to host my entire family at my home. Our dog had just been diagnosed with an illness that she would not recover from, so it was sad. It was exciting. It was completely overwhelming. But with the help of friends and family, we made it through. We charged into December, and we did all the things a family would do. We did Santa Claus pictures. We decorated the house. We did everything. This was our family. We would soon receive a phone call that there was a man that had been identified as a biological father. He would soon take a paternity test, and find out that, yes, it was positive, and he made the decision he wanted to raise his son. Sick, heartbroken. Another death. January 9th, the boys left our home. Now, I want you to imagine, if you can, taking your children and all of their things, putting them in a car. You're kissing them, you're hugging them by, you're trying to hide back your tears. You shut the door, you watch the car drive out of the driveway down the street and eventually turn the corner out of your sight. And you know in your gut, you will never see these boys again. It was a death, an awful one. We officially took our names off of the list. It was emotional. We couldn't do it. We were going to take care of ourselves. We were going to downsize. We were going to buy a lake house. We were going to do what we needed to do. We had Casey. We were fine. We were a family. Little did we know, momentum was building for something that I don't think we could have prepared for. On January 31st, we received a phone call. There was a young mother that had given birth on January 15th, and she wanted her son to have a better life than what she knew she could give him. So she was looking for a family to adopt him. Now, no one will convince me that what took place during this time was something, or by something, that is so much bigger than me. A young, pregnant teenager who's homeless, living in the state of Florida, hitchhikes safely to the state of New Jersey, where she would find and meet up with family looking for help. There to learn that they could not help her. They could not even offer her a place to live. Imagine that. So now she's homeless in the state of New Jersey. She would soon give birth on January 15th. She'd go to the hospital. She'd trade a hospital room for a motel room that was paid for by for churches, local churches, but only for a short time. An agency was called that deals with at-risk families, and an agency director answered the call. Now, this agency director wouldn't gone out on these visits, but everybody in her office was gone, and this motel just happened to be on her way home, so she decided she would go and do the visit this night. Now, the twist in this story is that this agency director had just returned months before from a vacation in Maine, where she spent with her sister. And they had done this several times before. Her sister's name is Faith, by the way. Faith happens to be one of our closest, dearest friends. And Faith shared our story with her sister on that vacation. So when her sister knocked on the door of that motel room and she heard of this young girl's story, she thought of us. And she was able to get us a text message to find out if we would be interested in adopting this beautiful baby boy. So when we got the text message that night, we went from downsizing our home to buying a lake house to, oh my gosh, we need attorneys and we need them fast. Because this girl's got to get out of this motel room. We got to get her home. So within a week, we were in New Jersey and we were holding our future son. And one thing that we needed in order to leave there, we had the attorney set up, we had the agency set up. One thing we needed was an Interstate Compact. Interstate Compact would allow us to take our future son out of the state of New Jersey and bring him into the state of Texas. In order to do that, we needed an agency that would be willing to do post-placement visits, to make sure our home was safe and all those good things. We started calling and we went through 15 agencies before we found one that would be willing to do it for us because we were a same-sex couple. But we got it done, and we made it home, and I'm happy to say that we passed our post-placement visits, and on August, we all flew back to New Jersey, and we officially adopted our son, Henry. Now, we adopted in New Jersey, and we did everything in New Jersey because New Jersey does recognize our marriage. We were both able to adopt him together, and both of our names are on the birth certificate. So it was a beautiful day. everybody tells me, oh, how blessed is Henry? Wow, that you guys took him in, that you gave him a life. I mean, who knows what his life would have been like. So, how blessed are we? Henry changed our life for the better. We are the blessed ones. My parents have always told me there is nothing more important than family. Despite your disagreements, despite your differences of opinion, at the end of the day, you got your family, regardless of how that family is defined. Just as there are variances of our hair color and our skin color and our gifts and our talents and our handedness that make us distinctive, so is whom we choose to love. There are infinite varieties of plants and animals. There are incalculable details in space and boundless characteristics of the ocean. The physicality of our humanity distinguishes us individually by a single fingerprint. Think about that. Just perhaps our families were never intended to look the same. I think that's an idea worth spreading. Thank you.